Now, joining us is Vanessa Neumann. She's the president of a company called Asymmetrica, a regular on the John Fredericks Radio Network. She's a dual citizen, Venezuela and the United States. She's involved in their political system. She understands what's going on, and she's been an outspoken critic of the Maduro government for some time. She is now coming to us live from Madrid, Spain. Vanessa, great to have you with us.
Great. Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure. If you hear a little bit of Spanish music playing in the background, it's kind of intermittent. This is Madrid, so we run on Spanish time, which is it's now lunchtime, even though it's like 3:30 in the afternoon. Different world out here.
Certainly is, and that's a long, the long lunch in the afternoon there. Vanessa, the president going to Miami yesterday, really bringing the Venezuelan crisis to the forefront in the American public, making a big speech there and blasting socialism for all its ills. What has been the reaction to the Venezuelan people of the president's speech yesterday in Miami?
Well, the Venezuelan people adore it. I mean, they think it's brilliant. And the choice of FIU, of Florida International University, is brilliant because you have a huge Venezuelan diaspora there. Mm-hmm. So the Venezuelan diaspora are people who are very pro-U.S., right? So they had left Venezuela fleeing socialism, fleeing the repression under the narco regime of Maduro, and come to the U.S. looking for hope, and now part of the economic fabric down there. So he was speaking to an audience that also is not only very pro-U.S., but it actually will be very important to the Republican Party in 2020 and beyond. Because if he does right by this Venezuelan group, I mean, electorally would be sort of like the new Cubans for the next 2 or 3 generations. These are, they would side with the Republican Party for doing this. So the choice of location was very bright, mm-hmm. And he was speaking to a very supportive audience. And we're grateful because it just continues the push that he's throwing down, that the U.S. is not going to back away from this, that they've cast their fate with the liberation of Venezuela. And those of us who want to see Venezuela liberated, we're thrilled to see and hear the speech.
So, Vanessa, President Maduro, hanging on longer than a lot of us thought he would. Now he's dug in. How does this government continue to survive with no funds, with his oil cut off? I mean, what is the dateline here for ultimate collapse of this government?
Well, I don't know. I'd be hesitant about predicting that because many predictions have gone wrong on that. But I will correct you on one thing. We don't call him President Maduro anymore. Now the president is Guaido because basically we call the Venezuelans freedom-loving refer to him as the usurper because he did not win the election. That was a joke in May. And so therefore, according to his own constitution, he's no longer the president. Now, how they're funding themselves is basically a combination of illicit trade. They're still laundering drug money. They're also trying to sell gold to Russia and to Turkey. So all of these little holes, and they're trying to now sell oil to India. But the U.S. is hot on their tail, so I don't know how much longer this can last. They'll run out of reserves soon. They were supposed to have run out of gasoline. So they're doing whatever they can. The big thing also that is funding them is also something that comes to a head on the 23rd of February, which is on Saturday, which is basically letting in the humanitarian aid. So the hunger of the Venezuelan people has become a way for Maduro to dig in, to exert political control, because people tend to be loyal to those who feed them. These people are hungry, so he'll distribute little boxes of food only if you don't revolt and only if you support them. Further than that, these boxes of food are also part of a massive system of corruption that finances the military that's loyal to him. So the other thing is the humanitarian aid isn't just to feed the poor and hungry Venezuelan people in a famine that is entirely politically produced by the socialist kleptocratic regime. It is also a form of political control. So when those generals who have been to flip say, please let in the humanitarian aid, that should be the end of it. Now, we don't know. The rumor is that there are enough military commanders to let the aid in and to flip the Maduro regime. But you don't know until that day happens.
So what you're saying,
We'll
Vanessa
see what
Neumann,
happens then.
let me understand what you're saying. So right now, the Venezuelan government apparatus controlled by Maduro, whether you want to call him president or not, he still has the apparatus within his grasp here. So they are distributing boxes of food. So therefore, in the streets and for his army, that food is the hand that feeds them. They don't want to bite it off because they don't know where the next box might come from. However, what you're saying is if enough generals let in the UN and U.S. humanitarian aid, then the boxes of food that Maduro regime is handing out no longer becomes their leverage because they're getting it from somewhere else, and then the bottom falls out on them. Is that my understanding?
Correct. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. They lose the political control, and the bottom falls out from under them. So they no longer can command the loyalty of the people, and it's no longer a system that finances the military loyalty because they're getting it for free. Well, from the U.S. and from the UN. And that will be the key to liberation.
The key to liberation is letting the humanitarian aid in so they're weaned off. They're not dependent on the boxes of food coming from the Maduro regime.
Correct. That's exactly right.
So what's interesting is the media reported that Maduro was not letting the humanitarian aid in, but they were just simply leaving it at, he said he doesn't want U.S. handouts. But the real reason is whatever limited food supply he's got, he's controlling it, and that buys the loyalty of certain segments of society that is going to dissipate once this humanitarian aid gets in. But that's been not reported anywhere in the mainstream media. Why?
Only here on the John Fredericks show because you have me on.
That's my point. That's what I was getting to. Thanks for getting there faster than me because you're on my show and you got the inside scoop and you tell everybody the truth and what's going on. That's why we love having you live on the scene. Vanessa Neumann with us, president of Asymmetrica, dual citizen, U.S. Venezuela, very involved in the political process there. And Vanessa is today calling us from Madrid, Spain, where it is in the middle of siesta time.
Well, almost, yeah. It's almost in the middle of siesta time. So I'm here for something called the World Law Congress, which sounds very sort of weird and highfalutin, but it's basically sort of a bunch of lawyers and a lot of human rights people, and the whole Venezuela situation is really top of the agenda because they're like, this is tyranny, this is a criminal organization, and what are we going to do about it? Mm-hmm. So I know this sounds sort of odd, but it also takes, fixing situations like this takes things like humanitarian aid from the U.S. and the UN, and it also takes people who will take human rights cases to court to defend the rights of the oppressed people. So these events like I'm attending in Madrid are important. We want to restore the country back to the rule of law, back capitalism. The United States was to us when I grew up, it was that shining city on a hill. And we were much more similar to the U.S. then than we are now, and we're hoping to get there. So all of these little activities going on, they're part of a broader pattern of getting back to freedom, to capitalism, and to democracy.
Once the Maduro regime collapses, what happens? Walk us through the transition of power. How do you get President Guaido in there, and what happened? Like, just walk us through what happens.
Okay, so Guaido has a three-step plan, which is we call the end of the usurpation, because as I explained, Maduro is called the usurper, and a transitional government, and then free and fair elections. So at the moment, we're still at step one, right? We're trying to you have an interim president who's internationally recognized by more than 51 countries. That's Guaido. He has a bunch of ambassadors who are out in all these other countries trying to get support for the humanitarian aid. That's great. Now, if the humanitarian aid comes in on the 23rd, that is really the beginning of the end, or should actually perhaps even be the drastic end of the Maduro regime. That would be the end of the usurpation. Then he has to name a transitional government, which is basically a bunch of ministers, people who do stuff, who manage the security, right, who manage their foreign relations, who manage the economy, who manage the oil companies. So he has to name all of that. And then we have to redo the electoral roll and have elections. He has said he will not run for re-election because he's an interim president. So he's sort of a caretaker, and therefore he should not run again, but just have an open field of competition where anybody can run for the presidency, and you'll have a system of primaries, etc. And that should happen within about 6 months or 9 months of Maduro leaving. That's what we're hoping for. And for that, we will also need international support by international organizations to make sure that the elections are properly run. So that's a 3-step process, and we're on it. The key is trying to get Maduro out. Hopefully next week will be the beginning of the end.
So, Vanessa Neumann, do you really think that President Guaido would not run?
Yeah, so he has said that he would not run, which is an interesting conundrum. And in fact, Senator Rubio and Bolton and others have said that Guaido should not run because that's his role as an interim president.
Right.
Someone else from his party can run. The leader of his party is someone called Leopoldo Lopez, who has spent 5 years as a political prisoner. He's now under house arrest, but he spent 3 years being tortured in a military prison. So that's the leader of the same party. He would presumably run. It's a tough situation because, of course, Guaido will have a slightly messianic status, right, after this. And the temptation to let him run will be strong. But the idea is to open up the field, to open political competition, to let everybody come forward and may the best man or woman win.
What about Vanessa Neumann?
Thank you very much.
I said, what about Vanessa Neumann?
Oh, me?
Yes.
Oh, right. Oh, me? I don't know. It has been suggested. I might consider it. Let's see where we are. Let's see where we are in a few months' time when we have a free country. And in the meantime, I would like to offer my expertise in security and defense issues to the reconstruction of my country. And sure, I may well throw my hat into the ring. I would like to, and let's see where we get. Why not?
So, Vanessa Neumann, sounds like you've not ruled out a potential run for president of Venezuela when the time comes. That's what I think I've heard, right?
I think that's another on the John Frederick show, isn't it? I think that's 2 exclusives you just got. When you
get elected president of Venezuela, are you still going to talk to us, or are you going to kick us to the curb and only talk to?
Of course I'll come on.
Talk to Fox News.
I'm loyal to you, John.
Say, Colleen, we could be talking to the next president of Venezuela right here. And she's going to come on my show, because that's what they all say. I remember we had Trump on like 15 times when he was running, and I would always end it by saying, now, Mr. Trump, when you get elected president, like, I'm going to be your favorite show and you're always going to come on. Yes, John, you're my favorite. I will always come on your show. I don't care what it takes. They can wake me up in the middle of the night and come on your show. Yeah. Okay, that doesn't quite work that way when you get to be president, but I'm going to hold you to your word. Vanessa Neumann could be.
You should.
I am going to hold you to your word. I have to come down there.
I'd be phoning in from Caracas. We'll need to have better reconciled telecommunication systems, but sure, we'll
No
get
way.
there.
I'm going to come down there and do my show from the Venezuelan Caracas presidential palace. I don't know. You got to phone in.
There you go.
I'm coming. I'd like to be in the
great weather.
It's great weather. Could you imagine Vanessa Neumann as president? I think you'd win. Start a campaign right here on our radio show. All right, Vanessa, thank you. Vanessa Neumann, we really appreciate the update. Let me just ask you one more question so I'm clear on this. So where is the Maduro regime getting, where are they getting right now, where are they getting the food they're giving away? Like, where are they getting it?
Oh, my God. It comes from Mexico, which is, has its own connections with drug cartels. It comes from, the boxes get filled in Mexico, handled by companies, shell companies in Panama, who take bids from other shell companies basically in Hong Kong. So it's a game of just illicit finance and it just goes on and on and on. But the boxes get filled in Mexico, and all our evidence, and actually even the Treasury Department's evidence, suggests that it's at every step in the process, there's a shell company that's owned by someone in the regime, and that's where you're getting the military loyalty from. So that's one of the things that's so important. That's why the humanitarian aid from the U.S. and the UN is so important, is to break that chain of corruption, cartels, and shell companies oppressing the Venezuelan people.
Vanessa Neumann, live in Madrid, Spain. Thank you for being with us. I really appreciate that very enlightening update, and we'll look forward to having you back as things unfold. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, John. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
More information, go to asymmetrica.com. Thank you, Vanessa. John Frederick.